This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. Well, with an encore career, the rewards are better than a cold beer on a hot day. And you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. Or as I like to feel, you can live the dream. And if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfreest.com. This is episode 176, and it's Coaching and Entrepreneurs. What's next with Jason Frazell? Jason is a growth and leadership coach of high-impact people and teams. He's got a background in tech, and he's an expert in personal brand strategy. He's coached high performers and job seekers that work at some of the most prestigious companies, including Google, Meta, Coinbase, and Spotify. So today, some of the questions we'll be talking about his personal journey as an entrepreneur, some of his experiences coaching other entrepreneurs, and he's got some insights as to what he sees coming in the new year. And he also turns the tables on me and asks me a couple of questions. Well, welcome, Jason. And I thought we'd just jump right into it. As you have thought about your career, what are some of the things that really helped you as you made that transition from being, quote, an employee into being somebody who works independently?
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. It's great to be here and have this conversation with you. And the first thing that's really helped me is not falling into the trap that it's going to happen quickly. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I call that a trap because I think there's a lot of things that will sell you on how, like, speaking as an entrepreneur, not even as what I do, and we'll get into what I do, there seems to be this, oh, it's going to be glamorous, and we see it in the movies, we see it on television, we do career changes. I'm starting my own business. Man, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. It's amazing. And you're good at what you do, and nobody pays attention. Mm-hmm. Why do they not pay attention? Because they're busy with all the things in their life, like their children or their career or their favorite sports team. And what helped me was having some great mentors who let me know that it's probably not going to happen as quickly as I'd like it to. And this is specifically for somebody who's leaving corporate to do their own thing. Mm-hmm. You can accelerate that with a good network, for sure. You can also accelerate that by testing some things while you maybe still have that full-time paycheck, which a lot of people do. That is what I did. I started side hustling what I do now for about 6 months and tested and found out a way to generate a little bit of revenue, certainly not enough to pay the bills. But those are some things I'd have for the audience is, one, think about how you could side hustle it or test it, maybe even with a friend for free, like depending on what, if you're like more of, and this would be more like people like what you and I do, and more of a service-based business where I can just give away my time. Mm-hmm. Try it with people and get feedback, see what works, see what they like. Would they be willing to give you a testimonial before you take the leap if you don't need to? And I'm very aware at the end of 2022 here that there are some people that need to take a leap because they were asked to take a leap in the last few months. What's happening in the economy and especially in the tech industry, which is where I spent a lot of my time. I think the other thing that was really helpful to me is having a group of people around me, including my own coach and my case, a supportive wife, that I could go to so that I wasn't alone. One of the, the way that you and I met, we're in the same group of masterminds. We're not in the same mastermind currently, but having another group of people that are also in the same thought process or building their business as well is extremely useful. I didn't even know what a mastermind was in my corporate career. Like I was like, and I'm in sales and I have a sales director and I have people and marketing people. And like, I don't really need support. I've got the company gives me support. This is an age-old adage. Entrepreneurship is lonely. That's been my experience. I don't know if it's been your experience, but find ways to make it not as lonely. And that's usually by connecting with other like-minded entrepreneurs who are going through their same journey, some ahead of you, some behind you, and having a community. So those are some of the things is one, having the support of a coach, some mentorship, finding community, and then just understanding that as fast as you want it to go and as the results you want, it's unlikely to happen. It doesn't mean it can't, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, I think just having talked to other people that have started businesses, you're 12 to 18 months to try to get things going. And I even remember there was a study done by Edward D. Jones talking about people who just entered retirement. And there was about 12 to 18 months before they got settled into, even if they were just planning to retire, because my perception is that you have such strong routines and habits and things you do at work, and all of a sudden your whole life is open, but it's disrupted too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm not at the retirement age, but my parents have both just retired recently, and they're both very active, healthy, and stay active. And my dad's like, I am not going to retire and do nothing, because reliably, so he's involved. He came from a civic background. He was a city manager for a long time. So he's on a neighborhood board in the city, more there from Minneapolis, involved with the church and doing all these things. But even then, it's like you spend 40 some years of your life getting up in the morning. And if you work like my dad was a government employee, and then one day you wake up, you're like, wait, I don't have an email address that anybody needs to send me something. I don't have that. I think that can be the same for an entrepreneur. You wake up and you go, I still have a business email address, but now it's my business email address. I used to get 100 emails a day in my corporate job. I have one, and it's a spam email. And by the way, like, there's no meetings on my calendar. What am I supposed to do with my time? So that's where I think coaching and masterminds is really useful to help with that mindset shift. Even if you were a very high level executive somewhere, that's a really different context to wake up and be like, wait, I'm my own boss today. What do I want to do? Am I motivated? Am I not motivated? Nobody's going to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think an aside to that is, in terms of the whole idea, what am I going to do, is you had a position and you were probably known by that position or title or whatever it may be. All of a sudden, if you're going to put yourself out there and have other people hire you, they don't care what your position or your title was. So you have to be able to articulate, what is the value I'm providing to you? Because maybe the corporate job, they came to you, but now that's not the case. You have to go to them.
Yeah, it's a really good point and you and I both know a lot of really successful people. I think we're both successful people. And at the same time, nobody really asked me what I used to do. One, they've either done the research on LinkedIn or on my website, and they see something. Probably the same. I know you were a long career as an executive at a really well-known company, but people don't really care that much. My impressions, they don't care. It's more like, hey, how can Lynn help me today? What's the problem that I have today? Came up with, and background matters, but that is another big, call it a context shift that I ran into, is in your corporate career, people care a lot about what you did previously, especially if you stay at the same company.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out here on your own, people don't really care so much about, and this is the way I like to say it, people don't care so much about what you did. They care about what you do, but they also care about who you're going to be for them. And
Sure.
And that's where I think the other huge shift is away from this model of like, it's all about your technical expertise, your know-how, your political expertise inside of a corporation, and how to get your job done. It's not really, you and I have the same profession. Like, that's not really what people pay us for.
Right.
Which is quite a different change from my career in technical sales, where it's like, I need to know the answers to these 26 things before I can buy this thing from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a different thing. And often people aren't at least asking us anyway for technical support. They're now. Yes, because I couldn't give it, quite frankly. I go find somebody who's 23 or 30. But on the other hand, sometimes they're asking us for things that the human condition hasn't changed that much in several thousand years. So there's things that we have learned about the human condition that people still would like to know about.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Getting a little more specific there, were there any specific skills that you learned first that were really valuable, whether it be email or, whatever? That's probably not, we all had that skill. And today's, we all have a Zoom skill of some kind.
Yeah.
But were there other things that helped you really get started as an independent person?
Yeah, for me specifically, I was very fortunate that, one, I came from a sales background.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of service providers, and what I mean by service providers, I'm speaking about people that really trade their time for money in some way. whether, and it can be passive income, but people like you and I, like people pay us to talk to us and to have us listen to them. I don't have any physical products to give you. It's just, I'm the product over here. I was fortunate enough from being a salesperson to know that people spend money to solve pain at the end of the day. It's like the basic human condition. Not a negative thing, because we have all sorts of pain in our life, but so I was fortunate enough to be able to know how to sell myself to a certain point because I spent a lot of time doing that. I will say honestly that it also doesn't get you very far when you're selling yourself as opposed to selling products. The second thing, and this was specific to me, is I am tech savvy. So I was able to utilize some technical platforms, just like even like automated scheduling. And I've been using I've been a remote employee using virtual technology for 13 years. So the idea of meeting people on virtual technology and being able to use a lot of the features of the platform, like whiteboarding, for example, or even things as simple as sharing screen, that was not a big jump for me. I think the other skill was, I don't know if they call it a skill or a mindset. I call it, I'm thinking about our friend Eugene. I would call it both. I think it's more of a mindset is I actually don't know that much, and I'm open to either paying for help or at the very least asking for help from good people.
Oh yeah.
And for my business specifically. And, I'm a big believer in paying people for their time when they're providing me something that they charge other people for, or at the very least doing some sort of trade where we can, if I said, hey, Lynn, I want to do an hour session with you, or I want to work with you, you say, I'll do that for you for free. I probably want to somehow provide you value back in some sort of way. And I think that comes from having a business background. So those would be the three things, my skills. It's funny because what I went to was like all of the things I didn't know.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things that's interesting as I talk to, either for myself or others, we focus on, I don't know how to do this or that. And yet we have a level of expertise. And so I always want to encourage people, own your expertise. You may have been a tremendous person in, we'll say, logistics or something. And that's what you're in effect, you're going to sell your consulting and logistics, say. Own that you are an expert on that, but also be humble enough to, so that's, learning how to do web pages isn't your zone of genius. So, pay somebody to create your web page so you can focus on helping people with logistics.
Yeah. You brought up a interesting thing, and you read about this all the time, but it's hard to do, is owning your value, and people are paying for everything that you bring to the table, not for your consulting for that hour. They are, but they're not paying. And that was a hard challenge for me too, is to own that, like, I am coming with a long regimented coach training program and a corporate career where I did learn some things, and I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to just teach you all these things, but you're not just paying for like that. And I'm sure you've run into this too, depending on the kind of clients you serve. When you get into that price conversation, forget it. This is not the right client for me. If you just want the lowest cost person, I might be the lowest cost person you talk to. That's great. But like, you're paying for all the time, money, energy, personal development work. Like I said, we both invested in a mastermind. That's for my growth, and I enjoy it, but it's also for my growth. I'm going to go get that return on investment back in the marketplace. And I know I'm worthy of that value. I think that was one of the hard lessons, is don't take it personally, which you'd think as a salesperson would be easy. But man, it's different when you're out pitching like yourself. Hey, Lynn, would you like to work together? I don't know. It seems expensive. Versus, would you like to buy my cybersecurity software? I don't know. It seems expensive. That doesn't feel personal. It personally hits my bank account as a salesperson, but it's like you're personally, for a while, I felt like I was personally being slapped in the face. I've learned to get over it and know that it's not usually about me. And if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But that was a tough lesson to learn. That took me a while.
Yeah, I think that and I've heard several people help me learn about the value conversation. And I always remember the story, I think it was Steve Jobs told, where he said, the best cabbie in New York will get me to the airport 30 minutes faster than the worst cabbie. But the best programmer will get me several hundred times the value of the worst programmer. He said, so you want to think of yourself as what's the value you're bringing? And I think also, if we've been in the corporate world, had expertise for a long time, we don't recognize how special we are or unique we are. The things that we find, why would anybody pay for that? They don't know how to do that at all. They find it very hard. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's so true.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where one conversation can be of incalculable worth, but it's hard for us to think of it that way. Sometimes think in terms of time and money and different things when in fact, the value that somebody gets, it could come in one conversation. In fact, in my executive coaching, some of the times when my clients said they got the most value out of me was I only maybe said a few words during the session, but I gave them the space to talk through something that was really bothering them or had them perplexed, and just provided a safe space for them to talk. And it was a huge impactful opportunity for them. So it's one of those things where it's interesting. Time and value are not necessarily at all the same.
No, that's funny. I love talking to fellow, what I would call like accomplished coaches like yourself. I consider myself in that boat in some ways. And I think we've talked with this. I'm a leader at a coach training program, and we always train our cohort. If it feels like you're doing a lot of work, you're probably doing coaching wrong. Ask some questions, allow space. And there might be some back and forth. This goes specifically to coaching. And I'm sure you've had sessions too. You're like, man, I'm doing a lot of work over here. And you're like, this is not going well. And it still happens. It still happens today. It didn't happen today, but it's happened to me very recently. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm doing a lot of work. I'm like, this is not going well. So I love that. Yeah, I love that. Like sitting back.
And I think just from a personal experience, I like to work with people who are up to something as opposed to, I got this problem, I want you to fix it. That's not what I help do. Technically, I wouldn't know how to do it maybe anyway. And I think that would be true though of even people who are out doing consulting in other arenas. You want to work with clients who are up to something. You may go in and solve a problem, but you may not solve it forever if they haven't really gotten on board with doing it for themselves eventually.
Yeah, we're kind of getting into the coaching arena, but good coaching doesn't just fix a problem. It creates some sort of breakthrough and long-lasting change, generally emotional mindset. And there can be some tactical ways of fixing things, but that's, to me, I see that as more as consulting or strategy work versus pure coaching. We're not looking for the fix here. We're looking for the thing that's going to have Lynn be able to move this forward, either out of his life or move something forward that's been a block in the way. That can be a mindset thing or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
So you've worked with other people who are either work independently or within organizations. Any things you've seen as maybe common themes here now as we enter a new period of economic uncertainty and coming out of one that was also uncertain?
Yeah. One of the other things I do is I do personal brand strategy work. That business is booming. And it's not because people are coming because they've gotten laid off. I don't think I've run across anybody that said, hey, I just got laid off and now I'm going to do my own thing. It's more there's never been a better time in history to do it because you can build a personal brand. It's not easy to build a well-known personal brand, but you can build a personal brand pretty much for free. You can have a website for cheap. You can have social media for free. Now, is it going to be an effective brand? Sure, some people. But one of the big trends I see is even if you're in corporate, people are building personal brands. See this all the time on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's really annoying. Sometimes it's really valuable. My own bias towards it. But even the trend is that, and this is from a study by Brand Builders Group where I'm a strategist at, it's contract work I do there. We did a personal brand trends with a well-known research organization. And I think it was the younger you were, and I'm going to skew these numbers a little bit, but the younger you are, the more you care about somebody's personal brand when you do business with them, including people that work inside of corporations. But this included coaches, consultants, doctors, attorneys, service providers who are used to be like, oh, I went to the dentist because that dentist was closest to me. I was like, oh, like, what does that dentist talk about on social media? What do I know about that dentist in my community? And that's a big trend I'm seeing in sales too. Like people that work in corporate sales is what is a salesperson talking about on LinkedIn? Because you know this, that as a buyer, I can find about 90% of what I need to know to decide whether I want to potentially invest in this solution through a website. So I don't really need to talk to a salesperson until I'm like right at the finish line. And I know for me, when people reach out to me and I get marketed to a lot, just I'm sure you do, I like to look them up. Who is this person? Do they know Lynn? Oh, and the way I like to do this, and this is that you're asked about the trend is, oh, they know Lynn. I know Lynn. I like Lynn. Oh, I'll connect with them. Sure. Like it's like law of, like one connection. And then, oh, do they talk about anything? Or do they just spam me on LinkedIn? Oh, do they actually have any thoughts about anything? Or are they just prospecting? Big trends I'm seeing are personal branding, whether you're in corporate or in personal. And then a lot of my clients that I work with that work inside of companies, the big trend is most of them are thinking about what's next for them. Even if they're happy in their job, even if they like the company they work at, I think the best way to put it is people are restless. People are restless. And I don't know about your career, but that wasn't really talked about or wasn't really, if it's either spend all your time at one company, or even if you didn't, it wasn't really okay to be restless. And some of these companies are like, hey, if you're restless, let's talk about it. Can we meet your needs, or how can we help you find something different? Which is also a very interesting paradigm shift. So those are some of the trends, like personal branding, whether or not you work in corporate, there's a lot of restlessness. Obviously, a down job market temporarily will remove some restlessness from fear.
Right.
But we know it's going to be temporary. Like, these companies are great companies. Things are going to come back. And then I guess the last trend I would see is I'm seeing a real shift in people being willing to ask for help, which is great for people like you and I. People go, oh, like Lynn, Lynn works with, I see Lynn's branding. Oh, he works with people that are doing career changes or have retired and don't want to be done. They want to do something different, either financially or maybe just because that's what they're called to do. Oh, like I'm willing to go and talk to Lynn and see if he can actually help me, versus this kind of old way. And I'm speaking to myself here. Oh, I'm going to figure it out myself. I was a big figure it out myself kind of person. Yeah, I don't need any help. No, people are realizing they need help because there's too much information, too much out there. Oh, interesting trends. I think all really good for service providers if you're good at what you do.
Yeah. Another study that's influenced me was done by, I think it was Edward D. Jones and an outfit called AgeWave. And they looked at not only retirement, but the whole scope of things. And then there's another, I think Stanford University has done something on long life. And what they said is, if you're going to be in your 20s, you could see another 80 years of a viable, healthy life ahead of you.
Yeah.
So you might actually find yourself not in just 6 different jobs, but 6 different careers. So while I may be currently focusing on people who are in the second stage of life, this may be a skill that pretty much everybody will be thinking. And as you said, whether they're restless or whatever it may be, I think it's already coming up that says, hey, the world is changing. And whatever I did today, that may not even exist tomorrow.
Yeah.
This whole idea of maintaining a set of skills so that you can shift over a possible 70 to 80 year healthy adult lifespan is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Knowing me, then maybe we'll do a live coaching session here. Being a little facetious, but knowing me, I'm like my parents. I really hope that when I get to the point where I don't need to work anymore, that then I'm already doing what I want to do, that I continue to get to do this sort of work. And then you just get to work with the kind of people you want to work with and charge what you want to charge and do good in the world. And that, I just cannot imagine a world where I would sit and be like, all right, I'm just going to sit around today. Yeah. That's just not who I am. And the other thing we were talking about is people move out of their corporate careers. You've been using your noggin, and for a lot of people, their heart, for so long with these big problems. Your brain is going to be like, what the heck just happened? And it's going to look for problems to solve. And you better hope those problems are positive problems, because it'll look for other ways to entertain itself. And we know what happens when people look for problems like that, or you get obsessed with something and you end up like not healthy. Maybe we'll talk in 20 years and I'll say, hey, you know what? I'm calling it in this thing, and now I'm just ready for what's next. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those things. It's an interesting, like I said, I'm focused mainly on people who are making a transition today, but I think everybody is going to be involved in that moving forward. And it's going to be interesting because, again, another thing I saw from McKinsey, that we don't have enough young people. And you can see all the job openings. So the fact, if we truly had all the people over 60 leave the workforce, that would be a bad thing because there's not enough people coming up behind actually to do things. So while we won't force people, it should certainly be available for people to do something different so that they can continue to participate in our overall economy.
Yeah, Lynn, can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
Because this is, now you're really getting into your area of expertise, not mine. Are there companies out there that are starting to put together programs for people that are like senior people? Senior, I mean, in terms of like executive level or senior manager level, and they're reaching that age where they probably could retire if they want to. They've done well. They've been financially done well, where they actually retain that talent. Because I don't hear about that in the market. I don't hear about that in the news where companies want to retain senior level talent. I mean that not from an age thing, but maybe it is like senior is all relative. But where you go, hey, we do have programs for people that are over the age of 60 that are nearing the age where they could retire, but we want you around because you're valuable and we actually need your skill set. Do you know of companies that have any programs like that?
There are a few. I won't say they're widespread, but I think P&G might be one of them. But I know of at least one company that has what they call their fellows program. And so these are people who have leadership skills, technical skills, whatever it may be. They no longer maybe wish to be running the organization, but they're willing to share their expertise with people. So sometimes they'll say, hey, I want to move to 3 days a week, but I'll be helping mentor this next generation of leadership coming up. So there are some companies doing that. Some of them are also starting to offer, I'll say, phased retirement. And there's always now that we don't have so much of the defined pension plans,
right?
It's you're more able to do some of those things. So it doesn't. The fact that your earnings decrease doesn't hurt whatever your 401k or whatever you have. So there's more companies are starting to say, yeah, we'll let you drop to 3 days a week or whatever it may be. So I think, again, it's not widespread yet. And many companies, I think I see on LinkedIn all the time, there are people saying once they found out I was 60, they said, yeah, you don't have enough of a timeline ahead of you. And that's silly to me because millennials don't stay in a job more than 3 years. So it's kind of like, well, what kind of timeline do you think you have, even with your younger people?
Yeah. Interesting.
So it's they're starting to do that, and but it is not widespread yet. And there's a new skill set too that I've seen people experience this where, for example, I might be entirely willing to just mentor people and step aside. But if there's a younger manager there who is still trying to grow their confidence and grow their skills and stuff, they can sometimes, I don't know, feel threatened is not probably the right word, but they're uncomfortable anyway with people. And then the other ideas, again, in most of the full-time work, everybody's all out 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So how do we deal with these people that only work 30 or 24 hours a week?
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's one of those things that's always interesting to me because most companies use all kinds of contractors. So it's not like they don't have people in that category. They just haven't used to doing it in this kind of a context.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So that seems to be, just thinking out loud here, that seems to be like one of the next waves of things that companies need to be thinking about. As people say, we're sharper, maybe it's sharper, but not so much sharper, but people actually, with advances in medicine, advances in fitness, that people can be 60 or even 70. It's funny, I don't know if you know who the actor J.K. Simmons is. He won an Oscar for Whiplash, I think in 2014. I just saw a picture of him and he's in a superhero movie and I think he's in his mid 60s or maybe 70. He's ripped, like huge. And like, these are like, you can be in great shape, have lots of energy and have a really sharp mind because you've taken care of yourself. Those kind of people are not going to want to just go home and retire. And quite frankly, I think we need that in the workforce.
Sure. Yeah. I think it was BMW. They actually redid some of their assembly lines because they have a demographic problem there. And all their skilled workers on the BMW lines were retiring because the work was too hard. So they went back in, and something they probably should have done years ago, but they redid the assembly lines to make the work less physically stressful and easier for people who are older to perform. And they were able to retain some of these workers because, again,
that's cool.
They didn't necessarily have younger people just automatically walking in the door to do that. It's one of those things where it's really interesting. And I tell people my tech skills tend to age, and they age quite dramatically sometimes. On the other hand, the Roman and Greek Stoic philosophers from 2,000 years ago were addressing the human condition, and that's still the same today.
Yeah, like like timeless skills, connecting with other people, understanding their motivations, motivating them, inspiring them, being willing to be in uncomfortable situations. Those things are timeless. And so if you have those walk out of your organization and they're replaced with technical skills, then you're nothing wrong with that because people need to grow. I think those are things you'll grow into a lifetime. But at the same time, you may gain somebody who understands technology, for example, but you are losing somebody who knows how to truly inspire and lead from a place of authenticity or ethics or integrity or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's not something that comes into my business much because I mostly work with people in tech, and tech obviously skews younger. Although I will say it's progressing as well. Like I know a lot. I work with, and I'm in communities with founders in their late 40s, early 50s. Sometimes these are people who have, quite frankly, they don't need to work anymore. They've gone through a liquidity event at a prior company, either as an owner or as a senior person. They've gone through an IPO or an acquisition. They've got what they need for them and their family to be satisfied, and they want to do something different. I think that's really cool because they can come in. They're not just technology founders. They actually have very good skill set around running businesses.
Oh, yeah, I remember in my corporate career, we went through multiple technology changes. But often as I talked to people who led those, they said the success of any technology transition ended up with people skills.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not about the software. You're like, the software I always like to make a joke. This is why companies like Accenture love when you do a technology upgrade or a technology transition, because they'll sell you the technology for $3 million and they'll sell you consulting for $7 million.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's actually what takes more of the people, the implementation, but also training. And how do you motivate people to use these things? And I'll just, tiny little story. My mother, before she retired 2 years ago, she worked in medical. She was like an administrator at a medical office, and they did an electronic medical health records transition. I won't say the names of it. It was hell, absolute hell. And it was not about the technology. It was about adoption of the doctors, adoption of the nurses. And then when things happened that weren't the way it used to be, people get frustrated. They end up going back to old ways of doing it. And then and it was all about how are you set up for success? And that's usually the people skills that are setting you up for success. The coaching, like, here's why we're doing it. Here's the inspiration for it. Here's how it's going to make your job easier versus, hey, we've got a new technology, go use it. Which is how technologists generally operate. Is, the technology will solve it. Not always.
And some of the things I think, again, my people like myself or my clients can offer is we've seen some of these things. I went through the 1980s recession. I went through the 2000 dot-com bust. I went through the 2008 financial, whereas some people in their whole career haven't seen a significant recession or adjustment like this. And all of a sudden they're saying, what's this? And so I think some people with a longer timeline can say, yeah, this is hard, but you can get through it.
Well, yeah, I coach a lot of people who work at places like Meta and Google, Amazon, Twitter. Meta had never seen a layoff ever until 2 months ago. And it's an 18-year-old company now, which is mind-blowing, but it was founded in 2004. And they'd never seen a layoff. They'd had trimming here and there as they changed business strategies. But generally, the thing is, hey, we're going to be closing down this division. Let's find you a role somewhere else that's growing. Not hey, we have 13,000 too many people. So yeah, it's a real fundamental shift. And I was just reading this morning that Amazon is in the same boat with, they offered, I don't know how this escaped the news, but Amazon offered early packages this week where, this is the first full week in December. They offered packages with that, hey, you can take the package now, or you can risk being laid off in early 2023, and it's not going to be as good. And then I also saw that there's a whole bunch of offers that got withdrawn. Like they had offers out to people, and this is across all divisions like Whole Foods and Amazon Go and all their different divisions. Offers were out and they rescinded them. And I think this is maybe only the second time in the history of Amazon, which I think is over 20 years old now, that this has ever happened. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Just side note, I can remember I was doing an MBA program when Amazon got started. In the MBA programs, they couldn't figure out how Amazon would ever make money at that point. And of course, they managed to do it. But at the point when they were starting, people said their business model they'll never work.
So, they're interesting too, because their margins were razor thin. But that's knowing what I know about Amazon now because of coaching people. They're like, they have they call it bias for action. Bias for action. What's the next thing to do to move this thing forward? Which is why you and I can decide that you and I want to order a product and in 2 days have it at our doorstep, and it can be something really strange.
Yep.
Almost anything.
Yeah, they did reinvent the business model. Amazing. Any other final thoughts here? We're wrapping up. We've had a nice, wonderful conversation. Any thoughts as far as how you or I could, and talk about your offerings? How do you help people? And we'll have any links and stuff that you want to include in the show notes.
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, I would say thoughts for the audience. For those who are considering a career transition, my offer is always, I'm just happy to connect with people. And I think the best place to connect with me is probably LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So we'll put that in. Also my website. I'm happy to spend 30 minutes with good people and just give my story. A lot of people, I have a podcast as well, which Lynn's going to be a fabulous guest on my podcast as well here shortly. Is people ask me a lot like, hey, how did you get to doing what you're doing? I'm happy to share that story. I think I was somebody who had a pretty good sales career, making good money. I liked good people, but I just decided I had a calling for something different. So what I would offer to the audience would be pay attention to that calling. And not everybody's going to have it. Mm-hmm. And not everybody's going to actually feel it, even if they do have it. And so that was me for a long. I always had this inkling, but I really I was never like, I'm going to go and start my own thing. And it's only a matter of time. I was just doing my thing, going through it. And also there's nothing wrong with staying and doing what you're doing if you like what you do, or even if you don't like what you do all the time. I don't like what I do all the time. You probably don't either. I don't wake up in the morning and go, wow, 100% of my work week is going to be just amazing. Because it's work, but I am fortunate that I do spend time. The other thing I'll offer is whatever you believe to be true, I do believe it's possible. Mm-hmm. If it's like a soul calling heart, or you want to give your expertise in a way, you can do it and you can make really good money doing it, because between Lynn and I and some of the other people we know, I know people who do it. Yep. So people that go, oh, you can't do it. You can certainly do it. The how-to, don't let people tell you they have the snake oil that's going to tell you the exact how-to, because nobody can tell you how, because the way Lynn's going to do it and the way Jason's going to do it are going to be different. And two, you're going to need some time. You're going to need some time. I would say that. And I'd love to, anybody who hears this, who wants to talk about my journey, I'm happy to spend 30 with you. The other things, I do executive and leadership coaching. I do it for anywhere from individual contributors up to generally like tech founders. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your business. As I've grown my business, I get people that are not where I started, and they just come in as referrals. They're like, oh, like this would be a good person. So I have people that are not tech business owners now that I coach. And I also do personal branding work. So if somebody wants to talk personal branding, book 30 with me. If you want to come on and be a personal branding client, I'm pretty good at that, of helping people develop their personal brand out in the marketplace. And I think those are the things I love to. So I'd love to connect with people. And at the very least, if you're not comfortable booking a call, let's connect on LinkedIn and stay connected that way. Send me a message there and be happy to say hi.
That sounds great, Jason. Thank you so much for being with us, and look forward to hearing about what you're up to in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Thanks for having me. It was really a fun conversation today.
So again, we had a great conversation with Jason. He shared some of his journey as an entrepreneur, what he's seen with working with other entrepreneurs, and some of his ideas on what we may see in the coming year. Plus, he turned the tables and asked me a few questions. We'll have Jason's contact information and info, and you certainly can connect with him on LinkedIn. With an Encore career, the rewards are great, and you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So if you're ready to get started today, contact me at lynn@lynnfrias.com, or head over to my website, lynnfrias.com, listen to a few podcasts, and get on the email list. So we'll see you soon, and thanks for listening.